Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar. Coming up in the next hour. UAE hosts first trilateral talks of Russia, Ukraine and the US as President Trump says Zelensky and Putin want a deal. The US moves massive military fleets in West Asia as Trump warns Iran of dire consequences. Trump's NATO remarks spark outrage in Europe. NATO members call for an apology over his Afghanistan war comments. Prime Minister Narendra Modi unveils a slew of developmental and infrastructure projects in Kerala, focusing on rail connectivity, urban livelihoods, and innovation. And Davos Summit ends with leaders seeking common ground amid challenges. Key security talks are set to take place in Abu Dhabi this weekend, bringing together Russia, Ukraine, and the United States. Moscow has restated its position that Ukrainian forces should withdraw from Donbass, while the Ukrainian President Zelensky, he has emphasized that Kiev will not concede territory. Both sides are expected to focus on the territorial issue, alongside discussions on security guarantees and economic recovery. Here's Rahul Upadhyay's report.
Ahead of the three-way security talks in Abu Dhabi on Friday, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov reiterated Moscow's firm stance that Ukrainian forces must withdraw entirely from Donbass. He called this withdrawal a very important condition, but declined to share details of the upcoming discussions.
First, we naturally don't want to publicly go into the details of the provision being discussed. Therefore, I cannot and will not tell you what exactly is meant by the anchorage formula. We believe this would be inappropriate. Russia's position is well known. Ukraine and its armed forces must leave the territory of Donbass and be withdrawn from there. This is a very important condition. There are also other nuances that remain the negotiations agenda.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that the territorial question will be at the center of the US-brokered trilateral talks in Abu Dhabi, scheduled for Friday and Saturday. Speaking after his meeting with US President Donald Trump in Davos, Zelensky said Donbass remains the key issue. He rejected Russia's demand that Ukraine surrender the 20% of Donetsk still under Kyiv's control. Zelensky added that a proposal on US security guarantees for Ukraine is ready, awaiting Trump's signature.
The key agreement on security guarantees is in place. Now, I am waiting for President Trump to set the date and location. It is up to him. We are ready to sign document which is so important to us. I would like to emphasize once again that this is a historic document.
Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov described the late-night talks between President Vladimir Putin and three US envoys as useful and extremely frank.
The talks lasted approximately 4 hours and were exceptionally substantive, constructive, and I would say extremely frank and trusting.
The Abu Dhabi talks mark the latest stage in Washington's push to end the Russia-Ukraine conflict. US envoys are expected to press both sides on territorial compromises while also discussing economic recovery measures and security guarantees for Kyiv. Rahul Upadhyay's report for DD India.
Aboard Air Force One, President Donald Trump of the United States confirmed that the U.S. is deploying a massive flotilla of warships and aircraft toward Iran. Now, with the USS Abraham Lincoln strike group entering the Gulf and C-17 transport aircraft also landing at regional bases, Washington's show of force now intertwines military might with human rights in Iran. This report puts things into context.
Aboard Air Force One on Thursday, US President Donald Trump confirmed what many had suspected. The United States is moving a massive flotilla of military assets towards Iran. This deployment comes against the backdrop of widespread protests inside Iran and a revelation from Trump himself that he reportedly personally intervened to stop what he described as 837 planned hangings, mostly of young men.
You know, we have a lot of ships going that direction, just in case. We have a big flotilla going in that direction, and we'll see what happens. We have a big force going toward Iran. I'd rather not see anything happen, but we're watching them very closely. I stopped 837 hangings on Thursday. They would have been dead. Every one of them would have been hung. This is like from 1,000 years ago. This is an ancient culture. Very smart people, by the way, but it's an ancient culture.
The US president framed his planned intervention as both a humanitarian stand and a show of force. He warned that any retaliation would make past US actions, including the withdrawal from the nuclear deal, look like peanuts.
And if you hang those people, you're going to be hit harder than you've ever been hit. It'll make what we did to your Iran nuclear look like peanuts. And an hour before this horrible thing was going to take place, they canceled it. And they actually said they canceled it. They didn't postpone it. They canceled it. So that was a good sign. But we have an armada. We have a massive fleet heading in that direction. And maybe we won't have to use it. We'll see.
The USS Abraham Lincoln strike group with destroyers and fighters is entering the region. C-17 transport aircraft are landing at Gulf bases, expanding America's presence and options if tensions with Iran rise. Days ago in Davos, President Trump launched the Board of Peace, a coalition of nearly 20 nations to oversee post-war Gaza and wider conflicts. Is the US signaling deterrence, not combat? Whatever the intention, tying these assets to Iran's human rights record elevates the stakes beyond standard geopolitics. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, the United States, as President Donald Trump has questioned NATO, claiming that the military alliance stayed away from the front line during the war in Afghanistan. Speaking to a US outlet, Trump also said that NATO's allies would not come to Washington's aid if requested. President Donald Trump, his comments have sparked outrage from several countries. The UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer's spokesperson said that Donald Trump was wrong to diminish the role of NATO troops in Afghanistan. The social care minister, Stephen Kinnock of the UK, also called these comments disappointing and wrong. He noted that many European soldiers died, in fact, supporting the US-led missions. Meanwhile, a retired Polish general, too, on Friday has demanded an apology from the US president, and he said that President Trump has crossed a red line and insulted the memory of soldiers who died fighting alongside American forces.
I believe President Trump crossed a certain red line because we shed blood for this alliance. We truly sacrificed our own lives. It's very difficult to hear such words which primarily insult the memory of the soldiers who died in Afghanistan.
From Greenland to Gaza, geoeconomics dominated the World Economic Forum, which came to an end on Friday. And this report has the details of everything that transpired at Davos.
Geopolitics took the center stage at this year's World Economic Forum in Davos amid uncertainty over Gaza Board of Peace and tensions related to Greenland. Underlining these differences, World Economic Forum CEO urged for continued dialogue.
Sometimes we really see strong disagreements. That's okay, because the purpose of the week and the forum's work over the year is to create a trusted space for dialogue. Dialogue is a prerequisite for moving the world forward. If you don't even have a dialogue, you will not see any results.
The Greenland issue had reached a breaking point, but US President Donald Trump stepped back from his threat of tariffs on 8 European nations, ruled out using force to take Greenland, which is a semi-autonomous territory of NATO ally Denmark, and suggested a deal was in sight to end the dispute.
people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland.
Trump also signed the charter of his Board of Peace, which he has built as a body for resolving global conflicts. He unveiled his new Gaza plan, describing Gaza as great real estate. Trump called for an end to the Ukraine war after a meeting with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky. Leaders also touched upon crucial trade agreements, with EU chief Ursula von der Leyen saying that India and the bloc were close to conclude a free trade agreement.
We are on the cusp of a historic trade agreement. Indeed, some call it the mother of all deals. One that would create a market of 2 billion people, accounting for almost a quarter of global GDP.
Highlighting India's growth trajectory, Union Minister for Electronics and Information Technology Ashwini Vaishnav said that global confidence in the country's tech industry was evident at Davos.
We will definitely become the third largest economy. What's working very well is the last decade of very transformational change which has happened in our country, and it's a very well thought through, well defined and very focused execution.
Over 65 heads of state and government attended this year's World Economic Forum. Bureau Report, DD India.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Friday unveiled a slew of development projects in Kerala focusing on rail connectivity, urban livelihoods and innovation. During the visit, the Prime Minister launched the PM Swanidhi credit card, extending formal credit support to nearly 1 lakh street vendors. The Prime Minister also addressed an NDA election rally in poll-bound Tamil Nadu.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Friday laid foundation stones and flagged off multiple development projects in Kerala's Thiruvananthapuram. The projects span key sectors including rail connectivity, urban livelihoods, science and innovation, underscoring the centre's focus on inclusive growth, technology-driven development and improving quality of life. During the visit, Prime Minister launched PM Swanidhi credit cards to strengthen urban livelihoods. Loans under the PM Swanidhi scheme were disbursed to nearly 1 lakh beneficiaries, including street vendors from Kerala. The initiative has enabled first-time access to formal credit for many urban informal workers and has played a significant role in poverty alleviation and livelihood security. Addressing beneficiaries, Prime Minister Modi highlighted the hardships faced by street vendors in the past and said the PM Swanidhi scheme would help improve their lives by providing financial stability and dignity.
जो लोग सड़कों के किनारे गलियों में सामान बेचते हैं, इन स्ट्रीट वेंडर्स की स्थिति भी पहले बहुत बुरी थी। केंद्र सरकार ने पहली बार इनके लिए पीएम स्वनिधि स्कीम बनाई। इस स्कीम के बाद देश भर में लाखों साथियों को बैंकों से बहुत मदद मिली है।
Prime Minister also visited India's southernmost Tamil Nadu, where he addressed his first election meeting of the NDA alliance in Maduranthakam near Chennai. The visit comes ahead of the Tamil Nadu Assembly elections scheduled later this year. Addressing the rally, Prime Minister Modi launched a sharp attack on ruling Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam, accusing the party of poor governance and erosion of Tamil culture.
आपने डीएमके को 2 बार क्लियर मैंडेट दिया, लेकिन इन्होंने तमिलनाडु की जनता का भरोसा तोड़ा। डीएमके ने वादे ढेर सारे किए, लेकिन काम 0 रहा। डीएमके सरकार को अब लोग सीएमसी सरकार कह रहे हैं। सीएमसी सरकार यानी करप्शन, माफिया और क्राइम को बढ़ावा देने वाली सरकार.
Prime Minister asserted that the NDA offers an alternative governance model based on integrity, respect for women, and pride in Tamil culture. In his maiden visit to Tamil Nadu in the poll year, the rally turned into a show of strength with top alliance leaders. Bureau Report, DD India.
And still to come here on DD India News Hour. The Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen is in Greenland to meet local leaders. TikTok secures its future in the United States. And Parliament is dissolved in Japan. Snap election announced on February 8.
Every time I open my wardrobe, I wonder how many of these clothes do I actually need? So today, let's step into a world where our fashion does not have to come at the cost of the environment.
We make sure that we don't waste a single piece of clothing. We use up all the scraps as well, gathering them into balls and making different products with them.
Consumers think that if they don't buy it now, they're going to regret it tomorrow.
Instead of having a linear thing where you produce something that never degrades and then you just end up having it in the landfill, you biosource it, you use it, and then it biodegrades and gets back to nature.
We use natural dyes for the garments. We extract the dye the way our ancestors did by using natural products with some modifications.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Moving on to France now, where the French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu survived two no confidence motions on Friday. And in fact, in the process, he also secured a symbolic victory after using a constitutional provision to force through the income section of his 2026 budget without a parliamentary vote. The motions tabled by the hard left and the far right failed after the Socialists, which is the key swing bloc, declined to support them following concessions by the government. The far-right lawmaker, Jean-Philippe Tanguy, criticized his Les Républicains and Socialist Party colleagues. This is after the rejection of the no-confidence motions.
It's never too late for MPs to do the right thing. Even though today, unfortunately, the Socialist Party and the Republican Party, or what remains of them, have chosen to save their seats at the expense of the national interest. This is obviously very clear, and I think that no one is fooled, including the French people, who may today feel relieved with the adoption of this budget, but will soon discover all its flaws, including, I maintain, tax increases and a debt that is growing every day, and which unfortunately promises further tax increases in the future.
Lecornu has now moved to push through the spending section and also the full budget using the same constitutional power. This step is expected to trigger further no-confidence motions in the coming weeks as political tensions remain high in the National Assembly. The Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen arrived in Nuuk on Friday ahead of talks with Greenlandic Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen as tensions rise over Greenland's strategic future. Frederiksen said that she had agreed with the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte that the alliance must strengthen security in the Arctic following weeks of uncertainty triggered by US President Donald Trump and his remarks about annexing Greenland. Both Denmark and Greenland have firmly stated that sovereignty over the island is not up for discussion, while remaining open to dialogue on broader cooperation. Earlier, the Danish Foreign Minister Lars Rasmussen, he in fact stressed the need for a calm and measured approach in future engagements with Washington.
We are not going to communicate when those meetings are, because what is needed now is to take the drama out of this. We need to take away from complaining, away from the yellow breaking bars. We need to get away from the fact that every time someone says something, We have to comment on it and escalate the situation. Now we need to have a calm process.
The European Commission chief, Ursula von der Leyen, announced plans for a major increase in European Union investment in Greenland aimed at supporting the island's economy, infrastructure and security amid growing tensions over US interest in the Arctic territory. The European Union leaders heaved a sigh of relief over Donald Trump's U-turn on Greenland as they met for an emergency summit in Brussels. The leaders said that they want the EU and the US trade deal to be back on track after the European Parliament had suspended its ratification in protest over the US's pressure to acquire Greenland. Speaking at a press conference, the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, said that the EU has collectively underinvested in the Arctic and for Arctic security.
We have collectively underinvested in the Arctic and Arctic security, so now it's high time to step up and to build on what we already achieved. Beyond investment, we also intend to deepen cooperation with the United States and all partners on the important topic of Arctic security. In particular, we believe we should use our defence spending surge on Arctic-ready equipment, a European icebreaker, for example, and we should strengthen our security and defence arrangement with partners in the region.
TikTok has secured its future in the United States, announcing a new joint venture to operate its US business and avert a nationwide ban. The deal reshapes ownership, tightens data security, and has drawn political attention from Washington as well as Beijing. Rupa Kumar Jha reports.
TikTok has finalized a deal to create a new majority American-owned joint venture to run its US operations, clearing the way for the popular video sharing app to avoid a ban linked to its Chinese ownership. The new entity, TikTok USDS Joint Venture LLC, will serve more than 200 million American users and 7.5 million businesses while introducing stricter safeguards for data protection and content moderation. Under the arrangement, Chinese parent company ByteDance will retain a 19.9% stake, staying below the 20% ownership cap mandated by US law. American and global investors will hold the remaining 80.1%. Key investors including Oracle, Silver Lake and Abu Dhabi-based AI fund MGX, each holding 15%. US user data will be stored on Oracle's cloud infrastructures with cybersecurity audited by independent third parties. US President Donald Trump welcomed the agreement, claiming credit for saving the app and thanking Chinese President Xi Jinping for approving the deal. Trump said TikTok played a key role in his appeal among young voters during the 2024 election. The move ends years of uncertainty after US lawmakers raised concerns that China could exploit TikTok's data or influence its algorithm. While analysts say users and advertisers are likely relieved, questions remain over how the new structure will operate in practice. Rupa Kumar Jha's report for DD India.
U.S. immigration authorities detained at least 4 children, including a 5-year-old from a Minneapolis area school district this month as part of President Trump's immigration crackdown. In separate enforcement actions, authorities detained a 10-year-old and 2 17-year-old students, including incidents that occurred while the students were traveling to school. In one case, 5-year-old Liam Conejo Ramos was taken by agents after they detained his father outside their home as they were returning from preschool. City officials said that the child appeared frightened and confused during the encounter.
And I saw several vehicles kind of blocking half the road, and I saw a man standing by a running vehicle in a driveway being detained by agents that were unnamed, masked. I assume they were ICE agents. And I saw them put the man into the back of an SUV, and there was several agents doing that, and there was a little boy there. He was wearing a blue hat and had a really tiny backpack on, and then they quickly put him in the back seat and drove away.
The United Nations Human Rights Chief has urged the Trump administration to ensure its immigration policies comply with international law and respect individual rights, warning against what he described as arbitrary and unlawful arrests and detentions. The appeal comes amid an intensified immigration crackdown under U.S. President Donald Trump, with federal authorities deploying around 3,000 heavily armed masked officers to Minneapolis. Officials say the operation targets dangerous criminal immigration violators, but rights groups report that law-abiding U.S. citizens and immigrants have also been caught up in the sweeps.
UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk calls on the United States to ensure that its migration policies and enforcement practices respect human dignity and due process rights, decrying the dehumanizing portrayal and harmful treatment of migrants and refugees. Individuals are being watched and detained, sometimes violently, including at hospitals, churches, mosques, courthouses, markets, and schools, even within their own homes, often solely on suspicion of being undocumented migrants.
Italy and Germany signed a security agreement aimed at expanding defense cooperation, underscoring closer military ties between the two EU and NATO partners. The declaration was signed in Rome on the sidelines of the Italian-German government consultations. It sets out plans for cooperation on tanks, artillery systems, and ammunition, including the self-propelled howitzer 2000. The agreement also covers collaboration on major defense projects such as Eurofighter combat aircraft, the Euro drone program, NH-90 transport helicopters, air defense systems, and combat helicopters. The two countries also agreed to expand cooperation on Class 212 submarines, including the near-future submarine, a type, while also promoting joint work on jamming technology and other advanced military capabilities. The Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi, she dissolved parliament on Friday ahead of a snap election on February 8, counting on her cabinet's high poll numbers. So the country's first woman prime minister, she had announced her intentions on Monday, seeking public backing for measures to shield households from rising living costs and also to increase spending on defense. Takaichi is hoping for widespread support for her cabinet, and she hopes that this will deliver her a stronger mandate, even though the LDP itself is battling low approval ratings and a string of scandals. Let's take a look at other stories making news from around the world. Drone footage shows ice building along Lake Michigan's shores as an unusually brutal winter storm hits over 160 million Americans. Driven by stretched polar vortex, Arctic air is bringing heavy snow and freezing rain across the region, threatening widespread disruptions and hazardous conditions. Unusual snowfall brought moments of joy to residents of Mosul, Iraq's second-largest city, as families stepped out to enjoy rare winter scenes in northern Nineveh province. And snow, it covered the streets and also the markets, offering brief relief in the city still rebuilding from years of conflict. Residents of Odessa braved biting winds and sub-zero temperatures as they sought brief moments of cheer along the city's frozen seafront. The city faced unusually cold weather and intermittent power cuts, but people still ventured out to enjoy the winter scenery. Still to come here on DD India News Hour. We'll discuss the troop build-up in Iran with an expert.
Can the US launch a bombing campaign against Iran? The Philippines vessel suffered structural damage. The saga of child sexual abuse is the United States China's debt trap strategy. Truth is stranger than fiction. But sometimes hard to uncover. Trust us to tell the truth, unadulterated and pure, of every story that matters to you. You read between the lines, cut the clutter, and connect the dots to get you the full picture. Watch Connecting the Dots at these times with me, only on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Here's a recap of our main stories. UAE hosts first trilateral talks of Russia, Ukraine and the US as President Trump says Zelensky and Putin want a deal. US moves massive military fleets in West Asia as Trump warns Iran of dire consequences. Trump's NATO remarks spark outrage in Europe. NATO members call for an apology over his Afghanistan war comments. And the Davos Summit has ended with leaders seeking common ground amid challenges. And for more on developments surrounding the US military buildup around Iran, we have with us Ambassador Anil Kumar Trigunayat, a former senior diplomat, joining us with his perspective. Thanks for being with us, Ambassador Trigunayat. Now, how does the US deployment of naval and air assets alter Iran's military deterrence posture? And what signals also does it send to the region?
Well, I think that President Trump, in the beginning, backed out a little bit because his generals told him that at that particular moment they did not have adequate assets. It was also reported that Israeli Prime Minister also asked President Trump to delay any further action. Now it appears that the several important assets, both from the British as well as the American forces, have been deployed also in Al Udeid base, which was at one time vacated. And also in the vicinity, we are seeking these aircraft carriers coming in, at least 2 of them, and several other strike forces. The statement from the United States with regard to the impending military action has yet to be coming in.
Yes.
But what we are listening is from the Israeli sources, they are claiming that perhaps tonight or day after, they are going to have one of the worst and the quickest attacks. And that's what is being said from Israel.
Yes.
But let us hope that for the sake of sanity and for stability that we don't see this military action.
Indeed. And how does the unrest within Iran weaken its position or even embolden its position in a potential response to the United States' buildup? Because the US is looking at this as a human rights issue. President Trump said that he was able to stop some 800 plus executions.
Well, I mean, there is definitely a major problem within Iran. There is no doubt about it. There is economic problem, which has called a distress and a stress in the society. And this is also a fact that a lot of protesters indulged in vandalism, and that eventually, and of course arson and all, which eventually led to a lot of deaths. In the 3,000 plus 600 or 500 soldiers also killed. So I think that this was one of the worst crises that Iranian government is facing in 47 years. But these kind of economic crises not easy to handle because they are also directly related to the sanctions, crippling sanctions that have been imposed for quite many years now by the West themselves. So they expect that this particular anger of the people will materialize into an anger against the regime, which will help destabilize or exit of this current regime. Now, of course, if, for example, the United States attacks Iran. That is not something that is going to automatically remove the regime from there.
Okay.
The regime is fully supported by the military, by the IRGC, and by the police. There are some reports which indicate that there are some researchers taking place. There is some kind of corruption, but that could also be a part of the disinformation campaign. But at
Indeed.
the same time, it is true that situation is very, very delicate, and the only hope is that we would not see the military action, because if that spirals out of control, it will be disastrous for the region, for the world, and for it.
And now, will the U.S. allies want to reduce tensions? I mean, the U.S. allies themselves now are having some problems with the U.S., but will NATO get involved, for instance? We heard that the German leader just recently, he said that, Friedrich Merz, he said that, it's the last days of the Iranian regime.
Well, I mean, this is also a disinformation campaign. I mean, this is, you put pressure on the regime trying to embolden the protesters, essentially. I mean, but there is going to be more mess and mayhem, as we have seen in different parts. And I don't think the Iranians are looking for it. An average Iranian, and if there is an attack, I can tell you that very likely there will be a greater support for the regime to tide over the immediate crisis and then remove them eventually. It'll also depend how the regime is going to behave eventually. That's very important.
Okay.
Because if they are going to use these kind of hard-headed tactics and force against the people while not addressing the core issues of economic distress, I think they're going to have major problems.
Ambassador Trigunayat, also the U.S. has started with a very aggressive posture now, we are seeing. And at the same time, the U.S. President has introduced this Board of Peace. How will this impact broader power competition, particularly from Russia and China, their strategic interests in Iran, and even elsewhere, in the Arctic?
Well, I think that the geopolitical and geostrategic competition is at its peak at this moment. There's no doubt. But President Trump has also invited on this so-called Board of Peace the Russian president as well as the Chinese president. I understand that the Chinese have already declined because they think that this Board of Peace is going to replace the role that the United Nations should be playing it. So at the moment, they are not looking to join this. But the Russians have clearly said that for the Palestinians, the Palestinian cause, they are even willing to give $1 billion out of the frozen assets. That was a smart move on their part because that clearly stakes the claim, and President Trump has said, yes, they can use it. So, and they're even willing to give more out of that. So, which is something that I think that's a sort of a political victory for them. And today, as you know, discussions are going on in the UAE, and Steve Witkoff and others have met Jared Kushner, President Trump, President Putin. So I think that on that front, there is some move that is taking place. But Iranians at the moment are definitely cornered, but they are at this juncture supported by the Arab countries, mostly the Gulf also.
Okay, fair enough. But do you see a change in the U.S. posture in a sense that because they are tying military assets or military presence to human rights issues in Iran particularly now? Is this something new for the Middle East, and what implications could it have for future negotiations on, let's say, other security issues, nuclear issues as well?
Well, I think that essentially the Americans have been wanting that the Iranians agree to the deal that they desire, not the Iranians, but the Americans desire. That means there should be no nuclear weapon possibility, there should be no enrichment, that there should be no missile program, or missiles also should be limited, as well as there should be no support to any of the proxies. Now, so remit of the so-called Joint Comprehensive Partnership, which they had signed JCPOA in 2015, and which was junked by President Trump, has essentially been expanded to include other dimensions, which are not acceptable to But under pressure, the President Trump feels that they are going to come. And of course, we saw that the Iranians have shown inclination to engage in dialogue, but they have their own red lines, I guess.
So, a final question, Ambassador Trigunayat. There was always the concern whether Iran had a nuclear weapon or whether it's hiding a nuclear weapon. I mean, this is probably the time for it to state the case.
Well, I think that there is no doubt that Iran has the capacity to make the nuclear weapon, and because they have been doing tremendous research, and I have seen some of them being trained here and there, and for the last 20-25 years, and they have a very big group of people who have been involved in this. So there is no doubt. But at the moment, the enrichment capacities, because of the deal being broken up, I think that they have achieved a very good level of sophistication in being able to produce. Some say within 2 weeks they can do it, and therefore there is some kind of rumor that the Iran might already be possessing the weapon. So it's something that that needs to be seen in the context of the war. If it breaks out, and if Iran is forced to the wall, I think that they might come back.
Okay, we leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Anil Kumar Thurgunaya. Thank you for your perspective. Now, let's take a look at other stories making news. Air India Express has been named as the winner of the airline category at Wings India 2026 for enhancing domestic connectivity and passenger experience. The award, recognizing efforts to modernize and grow India's aviation sector, will be presented on January 28 at Wings India 2026. India's flagship aviation event in Hyderabad. The Department of Food and Public Distribution, Government of India, is among 6 finalists for the 2026 Franz Edelman Award for its Anna Chakra initiative, an operations research-based system that strengthens India's public distribution system. The winner will be announced at the Informs Analytics Plus conference in Maryland of the United States from April 12th to 14th, 2026. The review workshop of national innovations in climate-resilient agriculture, organized by the Indian Agricultural Research Institute and the Borlaug Institute for South Asia, it was inaugurated in New Delhi to summarize 15 years of NICRA learnings and also to chart a roadmap for climate-resilient agri-food systems. The UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, it has updated its travel advice for Bangladesh, warning of possible disruption and security concerns ahead of the national elections scheduled for February 12, 2026. In its latest advisory, the FCDO, it noted that election campaigning began on January 22 and cautioned that political rallies are expected to increase, leading to large crowds, heightened security measures, and potential transport disruptions. British nationals have been advised to plan journeys carefully and to keep alternative arrangements in case of delays or unrest. The FCDO advises against all but essential travel to parts of Bangladesh, especially the Chittagong Hill Tracts, citing reports of violence in Rangamati, Kagrachari and Bandaraban districts. Travelers should monitor local developments and also follow official guidance during the election period. Still to come here on DD India News Hour. The Indian Armed Forces are going to be showcasing Operation Sindoor, a tableau of it at the 77th Republic Day Parade. Alex de Minaur keeps his Australian hopes alive with a straight sets win over Francis Taifoe. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. The Indian Armed Forces will present a tri-service tableau Operation Sindoor Victory through jointness during the 77th Republic Day parade at Kartavya Path. This tableau is a compelling one, and it's an authoritative representation of the nation's evolved military doctrine, marking a decisive transition to precision integration and indigenous supremacy. Air Commodore Manish Sabharwal speaks to DD India correspondent Akshay Dongre.
After India's Operation Sindoor, this is for the first time the Indian Armed Forces will be marching on the Kartavya Path on 26th of January. And one of the most prominent attraction of this Republic Day parade is going to be this tableau. And a replica of that tableau is put here as well of the Operation Sindoor and how the jointness of the Indian Armed Forces in fact give a massive blow to Pakistan and the terror infrastructure in the country. And to speak about this, we have Air Commodore Manish Sabharwal with us. Sir, thank you so much for speaking with us. Can you tell us about the tableau and give some more information on this?
The theme of this tableau is Operation Sindoor, victory through jointness, and that is the motto of Headquarter IDS. So what you see in front of you is a portrayal of the 88 hours of Operation Sindoor, in which India achieved unsurmountable success. All the platforms that had taken part during that operation have been put on the tableau. For example, in the first night of operation, you knew that 9 terrorist hideouts have been destroyed simultaneously. So some of the equipment that took part in that is we use the army guns, that is the artillery guns, the Warmate kamikaze drone, and we also use Rafale with Scalp missiles to destroy the terrorist hideout. The same symbolic hideout has been portrayed right in between in the middle of the tableau. In the subsequent night, we destroyed their major military targets. For example, we used the Su-30's air-launched BrahMos missile, which you can see on your right, destroying one of the major air bases. The targets inside the hangar as well were destroyed, and some on the tarmac as well as the runway was destroyed. We have also tried to showcase the S-400's use in this operation, and also you'll be glad to know that first ever longest air kill, as was mentioned by the Chief of the Air Staff, has been achieved by us, and this is only because of our air defense networking, which for the first time had the army element also amalgamated, that is the Akash Tir and IACCS together. Yes, so that has been shown that the S-400 is destroying their AEWC aircraft. We have used the Herop also in destroying the Chinese-built HQ-9, their radar, and that has been showcased.
Jointness is being highlighted, how joint theaterization has worked, and perhaps even though the operation was, when it comes to ours, it was a relatively small one, but when it comes to impact, India has given a blow to a country as massive as Pakistan. It has nuclear armament, but still, the Indian Armed Forces have given a blow that Pakistan will never forget. Thank you so much for speaking with us, sir.
Thank you so much.
And this is, in fact, going to be one of the most important highlight of the 26th January parade this time around.
Well, Indian authorities have flagged a fresh disinformation campaign after Pakistani propaganda handles circulated a digitally manipulated video falsely attributed to the Army Chief of India, General Upendra Dwivedi. So, according to the Press Information Bureau's fact-check unit, the viral clip is a deepfake, misleadingly showing the Army Chief claiming that India is opposing Pakistan's inclusion in the so-called Gaza Peace Board. The PIB clarified that the video has been digitally altered to create confusion on India's foreign policy stance. Officials have urged citizens to remain cautious, verify content from official sources, and avoid sharing unverified videos circulating on social media. Heavy snowfall in Srinagar on Friday disrupted normal life, forcing the closure of key highways and cancellation of over 20 flights at Srinagar International Airport. Light to moderate snowfall was reported in the plains, while the upper reaches saw heavy accumulation, with Kupwara and Kulgam districts receiving up to 3 feet of snow in some areas. Power supply was also disrupted following strong winds, and the authorities have imposed travel restrictions in tourist areas like Gulmarg. Disaster management teams remain on alert as snow clearing operations continue. Sports news now. Mumbai's Sarfraz Khan smashed a brilliant double century in the Ranji Trophy against Hyderabad. Sarfraz, he reached 200 of just 206 balls. He finished with 227 runs, hitting 19 fours and 9 sixes, and dominated the India pacer Mohammad Siraj for 45 runs. So this was Sarfaraz's fifth first-class double ton and the first of the 2025-26 season. Notably, Sarfaraz has been in red-hot form, recently scoring the fastest 50 by an Indian in the List A cricket of just 15 balls in the Vijay Hazare Trophy. He also starred in the Saeed Mushtaq Ali Trophy and was picked by Chennai Super Kings for the IPL 2026 at a base price of just 75 lakh rupees. Alex de Minaur kept Australian hopes alive at the 2026 Australian Open with a straight sets win over Francis Tiafoe. And the 6th seed, he defeated the American 29th seed 6-3, 6-4, 7-5 to reach the 4th round for the 5th year in a row. This makes him only the second Australian man in the professional era to achieve such consistency after John Newcombe, who managed that feat way back in time, 1969 and also 1976. De Minaur's run comes as Australia continues its long wait for a men's singles champion at Melbourne Park, with Mark Edmondson the last winner, and he won back in 1976. India's campaign at the Indonesia Masters 2026 ended in the quarterfinals as both PV Sindhu and Lakshya Sen bowed out. Sindhu lost 13-21, 17-21 to China's top seed Chen Yufei in 42 minutes, trailing her 6-8 in head-to-head now. And among the men's section, Lakshya Sen fell 18-21, 20-22 to Thailand's Thirasakat in a tight 46-minute match. Earlier, Kidambi Srikanth, Anmol Kharab and the doubles pair also exited, leaving India without representation in the semi-finals of this Super 500 event. Amid extreme cold and snowfall in Leh, the Khelo India Winter Games continues under challenging conditions. So, Gupuk Lake, it's completely frozen, turning into a natural venue where athletes are competing in ice skating at temperatures ranging between -10 and -12 degrees Celsius and battling strong winds, low oxygen levels and slippery ice. Here's a ground report from DD India correspondent Abhishek Prasad. Let's take a look.
I'm currently standing here at the frozen Gopu Lake in Leh, where the Khelo India Winter Games is taking place, and this is where the ice skating competition was taking place some moments ago, but due to the extreme cold, the games has now been postponed for a while now. Strong winds are blowing. The moment you take off your gloves from your hand, you face numbness. This is the frozen lake. It's a natural ice. You can see it freezes in winter conditions, and in summer it melts. But you can see it's snowing lightly, and there's extreme cold in this weather. But athletes are showing up. They are showing up in this harsh condition despite being so extreme cold, and an oxygen level is also low. It's quite slippery here, and you can see behind me is now the competitions have been stopped, but it will take place at a later date. But what it shows that the Khelo India Winter Games is truly on a spirit where athletes, despite harsh conditions, there is extreme cold, they have come and they have showed up in the Khelo India Winter Games. With cameraman Jagmohan Pradhan, Abhishek Prasad in Leh, DD India.
Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour, but let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those of you on the go, get the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. It's available on Android and iOS platforms. You can scan the QR code and download it. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. My name is Mark Lin from all of us here in Delhi. Thank you very much for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.